Hello, welcome to Revenant Reads. I'm Vin, and this is the mid-year freakout book tag for 2022. So this is just a quick tag that, of course, I've seen people on booktube doing. Seems like just a pretty decent little check-in for halfway through the year. So we're going to go through this fairly quickly, but thought it'd be fun to do. The first question is, best book you've read so far in 2022? I don't have a best overall. I have a hard time comparing books that, are not trying to do the same thing. Comparing a history book with a fictional book or something. So I tend to think of books within their own categories. The best history books that I read so far this year, I would say The Hemmingses of Monticello by Annette Gordon-Reed, and also Children of Ashen Elm by Neil Price, A History of the Vikings. Those are my two favorite history books so far this year. As far as fiction goes, I really enjoyed The Monk by Matthew Lewis. That was a lot of fun. Definitely, connected with my own personal sensibilities. And I just recently reread Eaters of the Dead by Michael Crichton, which is just a fun, rollicking sort of retelling of Beowulf that once again checks a lot of my boxes for what I like. So those are probably my top books. Two, best sequel you've read so far in 2022. I am going to go with a very loose definition of sequel, and I'm going to consider the landmark Thucydides a sequel to Herodotus' The Histories. Herodotus wrote about the Persian War, and he ends that book with really in the midst of the Peloponnesian War. And Thucydides basically picks up right where Herodotus left off. Their approaches are very, very different, but I still enjoyed Thucydides, and because he picks up right where Herodotus left off, and he is also trying to get at the heart of history, I consider it a actual and even something of a spiritual sequel. Again, even though their sensibilities are quite different. Three, new release you haven't read yet but want to. I don't pay enough attention to new releases. Four, most anticipated release for the second half of the year. Once again, I really don't pay much attention. I do think, however, that I saw maybe on Steve Donahue's channel that there is going to be a biography of Jefferson, a writer's biography of him as a writer, and that sounds very intriguing. And I think I heard John Meacham might be doing a book on Lincoln or something later on this year, and that would certainly pique my interest as well. Five, biggest disappointment. Disappointment would really suggest that I had a certain level of expectation, and I rarely have that. I don't often go in with preconceived notions. I would say that one of the more struggling or disappointing reads, though, would ultimately be something like Wieland by Charles Brockton Brown. There are logical inconsistencies. It's a little bit overwritten at times. Some aspects can be frustrating. However, I made a whole video about this, about another way to read Wieland, where if you could read the narrator, Clara, as an unreliable narrator, and I do think that helps. So it is sort of a disappointment ultimately, but I do think that it can be saved depending on how you read that book. Biggest surprise, that's the sixth prompt. Again, The Monk. I was surprised for a book published in 1796 or something, or late 1790s, how fast it moved, how modern it actually felt. Of course, it's you're not going to forget that you're reading a book from the late 1700s, but there's a certain sensibility or attitude about it, and the writing style feels closer to our time than it does to the 18th century in a lot of ways, and goes to places that are, even today will raise your eyebrows. So yeah, I was surprised by how much I liked that. And my other big surprise, I guess, I knew I'd like it, but I'm always surprised by how much I enjoy them. That's Egil Saga. I love those Icelandic sagas, and I had a really fun time this year for Sagalong and reading Egil Saga. Number 7, favorite new author, debut or new to you. I read two books this year by Annette Gordon-Reed. I read Thomas Jefferson, Sally Hemings, An American Controversy, and I also read The Hemmingses of Monticello. And I thought that both of those they had I mean, she was a lawyer, but it's a type of scholarly speculation that I think really works. I really liked how she approached things and her writing. So she's definitely one that I'm going to continue to pick things up, the things that she's written. Neil Price, I really enjoyed Children of Ash and Elm. I liked his writing style, his attitude. I'll definitely look for more Viking history from him. I said Matthew Lewis. He was a lot of fun. It's the only thing I'll ever, I think, read by Matthew Lewis, but I really enjoyed him. And I'd say, Michael Crichton. I mentioned that I had reread Eaters of the Dead, which I really like, but I had also read Dragon Teeth for June on the Range, his posthumously published Western. And I really enjoyed that too. So I've had Michael Crichton books sitting on my shelves for years that I haven't touched yet. I don't expect everything to be a home run, but it's definitely made me want to read more of his books. I really like his approach to, you can feel the love of history and also of science in his books, and I certainly relate to both those things. 8, new fictional crush. Not applicable. That's a question. 9, newest favorite character. I'm going to say Egil from Egil Saga, because he almost drowns a guy in vomit. That's quite a character. He was fun to read. A book that made you cry. Once again, not applicable. Book that made you happy. I already mentioned some of them. I mean, I was happy with The Monk. I was happy with Eaters of the Dead. I was happy with Egil Saga. Those all made me happy. Most beautiful book you've bought so far this year or received. That would be Shogun by James Clavell. I made a whole video about that book, but it's a special edition Blackstone publishing. It's not an expensive book. It looks much more, I think, fancy and expensive than it actually is, but it's got a very beautiful presentation to it. So if you're interested in that, and especially with Shogun, you can check out my video. And 13, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? Well, I do have some projects that I'm working on that I know I'll be reading books for. We have, in August and September, Book Trek, reading Star Trek books for 2 months, and that should be a lot of fun. So I know I'll be reading Star Trek books for that. I'm continuing through the kind of informal Gothic book club, so we're reading Gothic books. And also, maybe later on this year, Mark from Book Time with Elvis and I, maybe we'll read one of the other ancient historians, maybe Xenophon or something, because we had, I already mentioned Thucydides. We had read Thucydides early this year, and we read Herodotus last year. So we'll see if we can get another one of those in. But those are definitely categories that I plan to read more books for. And that is it. Those are my answers for the mid-year freak-out book tag for 2022. Again, just a nice way to check in. If you've read any of those books, or you have any other comments or even recommendations based on what I said, I'd love to hear them. And as always, thank you.